my honest opinion on the Stark. Is it a buy? Is it not a buy? I'm just gonna be honest with you right now, it's not a buy. All right, I have to totally backtrack my initial reaction to this bike, because I was saying that this bike is not a recommendation for motocross and supercross because of how finicky and RC like it is in the air. Hands down, the motorcycle would be the best in SuperMoto and GNCC, Hare Scramble, Baja, because it's a cheater bike, because of how freaking fast the thing is. But in the air, it's got an RC feel to it, where if you're letting off, it wants to nosedive, and if you're giving it gas, it wants to totally wheelie over. But after spending a couple hours on the bike, I got a setting that made it feel more like a 450, because where it came from with the shop, they had it set at 80% engine braking and regenerative braking, which was nice because it would honestly start charging the battery like an alternator, or how a simple hybrid truck does with charging the battery. However, for racing application, I went from 0 to 100 and back and forth, and I found that 25% engine braking felt the most like a 450, where in the air, it's sort of holding you back a little bit, but it's not making you feel as if the front wheel is completely diving, and you don't have to go keep the bike moving a little bit, and then if you grab it any throttle, then it was doing something like this. At 100% engine braking, it was really pronounced, where you let off and that sucker was going down like this, which was scary, especially if you're going to do supercross type jumps or even moto. But this motorcycle is the fastest effing thing I've ever ridden. I found a good setting right about 56 horsepower. I went up from there, and the bike is just scary, where you would think a motorcycle like this would have traction control, but it kind of does, because you're able to give it as much power as you would like. There's actually been 2 of them out here. My point is, the less horsepower, the more control you're gonna have over it. The faster riders are probably gonna want the more responsive, but as the track gets drier and slipperier, you're gonna wanna lower down the horsepower. It's gonna be like manual traction control. And if you want the total 2-stroke feel, you can have the regenerative braking all the way off, which was nice, but I kind of liked, I'm a guy that likes to flow into my corners. I'm a guy that likes to be third gear and but when you don't have any gears, how are you going to get that small little bit of brake? Well, it's at 25%. In the air, it felt good, because at first I was nervous about scrubbing and moving and doing anything, to the point where I was much faster on the 4-strokes, especially that factory edition Husky. Yes, I'm borrowing everybody's bike right now because I'm doing the whole Ironman. Anyway, I digress. This is more a review about this motorcycle, and I'm tickled to say that this is the freaking future. At first, I was depressed. I might put in some tidbits there, but it was because I didn't play with the bike. I was just moving out, going completely stock. But this motorcycle has so many settings that you can change and find it to where you like this bike. It's going to take a little bit of time to make it feel comfortable for you, because this bike will literally scare the pants off of you. But then it also can make you feel like a super fast A rider, because you're just wide open on an 85. The amount of customizability for this bike is sheer amazing. And for every privateer out there, this is the go-to bike. Vet riders, this is the go-to bike. Novices, this is the go-to bike, because you can customize it. You might need to spend some more time doing it, and with a new generation of kids coming up, you will be able to play with this stuff. Because at first, I was excited because I'm not as mechanically inclined, because I always had mechanics behind me that did everything for me. I just wore shit out. But now that I'm an adult, these motorcycles require a lot of maintenance. Air filter changes, change the valves, you gotta change the gaskets, you gotta change the clutches. This bike I'm honestly faster on than the 450. And after riding this, then getting on the 450, I'm like, man, this is old tech. This motorcycle is slow, yet it still has that original feel, because I'm comfortable with that those type of motorcycles, the 4-strokes. And the one thing that this bike is so cool about is it's heavier, but it feels lighter than all of them. It feels like a 250F. How many times has a racer wanted the power of a 450, but the feel of a 250, and that is this sucker. That is absolutely this sucker. And it stops on a dime. This sucker, I almost felt like I didn't even need to use the rear brake that much because I could just rely on the front brake. I mean, it's something you don't really recommend, but it just, the ergonomics of it felt so safe. I loved going around corners in this sucker. Absolutely freaking loved going around it. It would go inside no matter what. Where on the 450, I would have to case some jumps to make the inside. Where on this sucker, I could clear the jumps and still make the inside. And the beautiful thing is there's no clutch. So you're able to stop and literally go to 0, and then you could accelerate if you want to. You don't have to pull in the clutch. And on a 4-stroke, as soon as you pull in the clutch entering a corner, it's gonna pop you out of a rut because you're going from engine braking to no engine braking. So really the setting that I found with around 20 to 25% regenerative braking made me fall in love with this bike. Where at 80%, I was scared of this bike, and I thought that this bike was dangerous because of the RC feel to it. So how did you adjust it? Well, it was with horsepower and the engine braking. It's incredibly cool that this thing is going. This is definitely going to be the next bike that I probably purchase just because of the low maintenance, as long as Honda doesn't already release something, because I might go with something like that. And you know that the big main guys, the Japanese and Austrian bikes, are going to be trying to reverse engineer this sucker to almost steal all of the tech, which is kind of sad, but these guys are innovators and I support them entirely. This is such a cool motorcycle. Yes, you could get out of hand where this bike was, you could say that it's built for more of a pro, but you just have to tame it down. Its customizability is its incredible selling point. The only thing that sucks is I tried charging it off of my truck and it was gonna take like 4 hours. The generator, it cuts that in half. That is literally the only downside to the sucker, is because I can ride longer than this bike will let you. And you can notice that it'll start going down in power and start going into a limp mode, but it's not gonna kill you, right? It's not like instantly when I got down to 30% the first time I rode it, which was after about a 25-minute moto, I wasn't tired, but it scared me. It made me feel as if, okay, typically this is when a motorcycle seizes, when it feels that way. But the last time I rode it out, I rode it down to 10%, and yes, it got slower, but it didn't feel unsafe. I don't really recommend it going to 0. Man, I've completely changed my tune on this bike. And hats off to the Stark engineers. This is a damn cool motorcycle that anybody that's competitive, this is the go-to. This is the future, because I was saying I don't recommend this motorcycle. I do not recommend this motorcycle. And however, after a couple hours with this motorcycle, I have fallen in love with this motorcycle. It wasn't love at first sight. It had to inch me in, and it absolutely did that. And for riders that are learning how to ride, this is easy because there's no clutch. There's no power shifting. There's no nothing. There's just turn it and go. The rear brake is nice having it down there. I don't know if you could put it up on the front if you wanted to, but really there's so many positives to this thing. When you buy a motorcycle that's a factory edition that comes with all this fancy stuff, it just feels like yesterday technology once you make this bike feel like you. You know, you send your suspension off to a factory connections or a local guy or anything to try to feel more comfortable. You change gearing, you end up putting pipes on your bike. You do a lot to try to get that bike to feel comfortable for you. And this thing, you can do it right out of the box just with what it comes standard by the customizability with the user interface. And it's very intuitive. And if you're an older guy that's looking to buy this, just have your son, have your kid come look at it, because it's literally just a cell phone.
Old people are smart too.
Sometimes. In closing, this is the perfect bike for any sort of a racer. If you're a novice rider and you're looking to get a competitive advantage, boom. If you're an intermediate, competitive advantage, boom. Pro rider that's looking to compete against guys that have unlimited money, this sucker right here. It is so freaking fast, and this motorcycle turns better than any of the other ones out of the box. out of the box. No need to change triple clamps to adjust the wheelbase or anything. This sucker freaking kicks effing ass. And I want to take it home. I really do. The only downside is the charging. The charging sucks. So the battery is the thing that's coming up, and that will get changed with time. And so for everyone out there that feels as if these things are dangerous because you can't hear them, well, if you have a track full of them, nobody couldn't hear me, right? Because I could easily just scream at them if something happened. I used to be one of those guys, no longer. This is kind of a longer review. It's got a lot of settings that you could customize with even the suspension. And the suspension right out of the box, it's a little soft. And the faster you go, you want to have it a little bit stiffer, but I am super impressed with how this sucker corners, how the brakes work, the way it feels in the air. It's going to take a little time to get used to, but you can make it feel right off the bat easier by changing the horsepower and the regenerative braking, because that'll give the lag that you want in the throttle. And so if you guys need help with any of that stuff or you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. But for anybody that's not super mechanically inclined, this is it. And for a privateer to not have to spend hours upon hours working on their motorcycle, this is it. They can spend more time in the gym, more time riding, and more time recovering and, you know, just driving to the freaking races. Woods riders, this thing will do it all. SuperMoto, this thing, if I was Honda, if I was Yamaha, if I was any of the other manufacturers, I would be scared. I would be scared because right out of the box, this sucker beats them hands down in almost every scenario besides maybe feel in the air. It's not, that's the only thing that they need to kind of work on, is maybe there's a gyro or something to make it feel less finicky. But for right now, again, you can change it with the throttle and the horsepower and the regenerative braking. So till next time, this is Johnny Hopper. Keep it WFO. Bra-da-da-da. Nova. Bra-ba-ba-ba.